So, hello, good morning everyone. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Lester D. Marukot and I'm a graduate of University of Makati. I just passed the recent June 2009 board exams. So for this audio lecture, I will be talking all about nursing care of the clients with cancer. So first of all, it is best if we start by defining what is cancer. So cancer is a family of complex diseases with manifestations that vary according to the body system affected and the type of tumor cells involved. So cancer results when normal cells mutate into abnormal, deviant cells that then perpetuate within the body. So that's the very simple definition of cancer. So we will discuss more on how cancer develops when we reach the pathophysiology section of this lecture. So for cancer, we can say that cancer is idiopathic, or in other words, it has no known exact cause. So for cancers, the first thing that we should consider are the risk factors, or those factors which contributes to the development of a certain cancer. So first, we have heredity. So heredity, it is estimated that 5 to 10% of cancers have a hereditary component with it. So, for example, there is a familial pattern for breast and colon cancer. So, meaning if there is one family member in your family tree that had breast cancer or that had breast cancer or colon cancer, it is very much possible that you, as a member of that family, has a higher risk to develop the same cancer, because we all know that cancer is a disease more into genes, right? This is because of abnormal chromosomes or abnormal DNAs. That is basically the start of your cancer. So heredity really plays a great role in terms of development of cancer. Next would be age. So approximately 70% of all cancers occur in people over age 65. So most of those cancer patients are elderly, because of course there are a lot of factors for that, since they have uh, decreased immunity, and they have hormonal changes, and they have also this, let's say most of them have sedentary lifestyle, because it's believed that as you get older you should do less work. So with those different factors associated with their age, they have a higher risk to develop cancer. Okay, the third risk factor would be gender. So gender itself is a risk factor for developing cancer. Why? For example, for female, just being a female alone predisposes you to develop breast cancer. Yeah, breast cancer is not just for females only. There are also breast cancer for males. But being a female gives you a higher risk to develop breast cancer. Wherein for male, bladder cancer is predominant, or let's say prostate, because only males has prostate, right? So prostate cancer is for males, while cervical cancer is for females. So gender is a risk factor for developing a certain type of cancer. So for the fourth risk factor, that would be poverty. So why? Poor people are at higher risk to develop cancer because they have inadequate access to health care, especially preventive screening and counseling, which is our main focus as nurses in dealing with cancer. Because in cancer, the key here to manage cancer is early detection and screening. For those people who are poor, or who is in this bottom or lower level of uh, our economy, so once they felt something unusual with their body, they wouldn't go directly to a healthcare institution to have their self checked. They would just tolerate the pain or tolerate whatever they are feeling until it came to a point na they cannot tolerate it anymore, until na they feel like they're dying already, because they do not have, they're thinking about the money that they're going to spend if they're going to have their self checked up, right? So they're doing all the means to save up. So if that is the case, when they go to a hospital, they will be diagnosed, let's say for cancer, since we're talking for cancer, in a later stage already, which is very hard to manage. So for cancer, let's say it would be already stage 4. For stage 4 cancers, what would be our management? We can still try to do the usual management for cancer, which is chemotherapy, surgery, or whatever. But the prognosis for those types of cancer is really very low. So it is best if you that's that's what those poor people do not realize, because they're thinking of saving up, but in the end they would end up sacrificing their lives. They would end up having a poor prognosis to recover, because their disease was already diagnosed very late, and it was diagnosed in a very late stage, which has very poor prognosis already. So it is best that if you spend money for diagnosis, and that eventually it would lead to a higher prognosis, and your cancer would, there is a great possibility that it would be treated and you would recover completely from that disease. So that's for poverty. So the fifth risk factor for developing cancer is stress. Although we are aware that all people are experiencing stress, or stress is part of our daily living, it is dependent on how on how an individual manages his or her stress. So for stress, this predisposes an individual to develop cancer, because uh, this affects our immune system. Yeah, even if we do not know how to deal with stress, uh, this would harm the immune system in the long run. If an individual is consistently exposed to a stressor which he or she cannot manage, and thus affecting immunity. If you have a decreased immunity, that would therefore promote vulnerability to develop cancer. So as individual, especially for those working people, we should know, or we should learn how to manage our stress, because that's part of our daily lives, right? So that's for stress. So the next risk factor would be diet. I think we are all aware of this, because there are a lot of foods which are considered to be carcinogenic. There are also foods that are considered as genotoxic. So those foods which are high in fat, low in fiber, like fried foods, those are foods which are uh, said to be carcinogenic, or which helps, or which is an which promotes vulnerability of an individual to develop cancer. So, for example of foods that predisposes an individual to develop cancer would be um, red foods with dyes. So let's say tocino, those foods with preservatives, and decaffeinated coffee here was also cited uh, as carcinogenic. So knowing this, we should avoid those foods which are considered to be carcinogenic. Barbecue, diba? Those foods, mga inihaw, those foods are also considered to be carcinogenic. So the next risk factor is occupation. So for this risk factor, of course, there are certain occupations which are at risk to develop certain types of cancer. For example, for farmers and construction workers, they are at risk to develop skin cancers, since they are exposed to solar radiation, right? And another example would be the X-ray technicians, as well as biomedical researchers, which are exposed to ionizing radiations. And we do know that radiation is an agent which aids in mutation of our genes, and that could help in developing cancer in a way that they modify our genes, and that therefore creating defective genes, which would lead to abnormal cell growth, which is neoplasm, and then therefore creating tumor, which will lead to cancer and then its symptoms. So that is how occupation affects an individual's risk to develop cancer. So next risk factor would be tobacco use or smoking. So we all know that in every diseases, smoking is always a risk factor, especially for cardiac diseases, right? So it same goes with cancer. So for tobacco use, we all know that tobacco or smoking is linked or highly linked. It's always linked for lung cancer, but not just with lung cancer. It is also linked with the development of other cancers such as oropharyngeal cancer, esophageal, laryngeal, gastric, pancreatic, and bladder cancers. So we can see that tobacco is really not healthy, and we I don't really get it because we cannot benefit. I don't see any benefits of using tobacco or cigarettes. So that's for tobacco use. If tobacco or smoking is a risk factor, of course, alcohol use is